Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. As we begin this program, I reflect on the land that I am sitting on and standing on with appreciation for the original caretakers of this land and the opportunity I have to live and do justly on this land. And so it is with that reflection and with honor of the first people and the first caretakers of this land that we proceed with our program this afternoon. I'll now read the statement in affirmation of Black Lives from Fred Hutchinson Cancer Research Center, which is now the Fred Hutchinson Cancer Center. We are committed to becoming an anti-racist institution, and in this endeavor, we are determined to strengthen and deepen our efforts that affirm the equal rights, value, and protection of Black people in the streets, on our campus, and in our science. To that end, we will identify any policy, practice, or behavior at the Hutch that reflects anti-Black racism and dismantle them, holding ourselves accountable in these efforts. Black lives must matter in our science, our recruitment, our institutional climate, and our influence. Welcome to the second dialogue as part of the Public Art and Community Dialogue program that is sponsored by both the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion with our principal collaborators, the Communications and Marketing Department of Fred Hutch. I am Paul Buckley, Vice President and Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer at the Hutch. And today we are announcing and introducing our first selected artist as part of this program, who impressed us with their perspective on the underlying humanity within medicine and communal healing. They approach their art in a holistic and beautiful way that holds space for conversations, just like the one we are hosting today. So I'm really excited about what we will do today. As an overview of the program, this program is organized around the fact that systems of oppression depend on the public losing interest in movements driving transformative change. As an extension of our efforts to drive transformative change in our organization and the greater community, Fred Hutch is taking an authentic, affirming, and active approach to sharing the message that Black, Indigenous, and all people of color and other minoritized and underrepresented people matter to us. In our science, in our community, in our patient experience, and beyond. The ODEI, Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Public Art and Community Dialogue Program will engage our communities in a series of dialogues and showcase the artwork of diverse artists within our community across our South Lake Union campus and in programming activities. The program will also provide an opportunity for the selected artists to connect, explore, or align with each other and representatives from Fred Hutch to inform their final commissioned work and future community initiatives. These art installations will serve to replace the current Black Lives Matter banner and flag and engage other underrepresented communities and create broader messages of solidarity. Our dialogue program, as a part of the overall Public Art and Community Dialogue program, provides an opportunity for employees and the broader community to be in dialogue about community solidarity and our pursuit of equity in research and healthcare. We are fostering ongoing dialogues with marginalized and oppressed communities to inform our commitment to inclusion and how we represent that commitment in visual form. Dialogue is an opportunity to share and pursue an understanding of lived experiences, reflections, history, culture, and aspirations for holistic and sustained health in the Black community and in all communities. Our discussion will further deepen Fred Hutch's connection to the community we find ourselves in and drive an internal and external movement toward greater justice in health and research. So we encourage the community that has joined us today to send questions and thoughts through the Q&A function for our panelists. I am now very pleased to announce our selected artist for the Black or African American community. And that artist is Mark Mademola. Mark Mademola is an African visual artist born in South Africa. Originally a graphic designer, he considers himself a versatile creator with a portfolio that explores the cadences of African identity and spirituality, often through the cultural aesthetics of portraiture and surrealism. Mademola aims to emphasize the experience of Blackness through his work. He believes in sharing positive representation to and for the Black community while translating the complexity we bring to the world through vivid imagery. He is highly inspired by nature, its authenticity, unending originality, and innovation. As such, Mademola's passions are tied in with Africa, its land, its people worldwide, and this can be seen in his work. So Mark and I had an opportunity to connect just early last week to discuss what his approach is to this program, and we will be sharing that pre-recorded discussion now. Welcome.
Hi, Paul. It's good to see you also.
And thanks again and congratulations for being our selected artist for the Black community for our Public Art and Community Dialogue program at the Fred Hutchinson Cancer Center. Very exciting times.
Thank you.
Yes.
It's great.
Yes.
Great to be on.
So I wanted to start this second conversation I'm having with you around healing, right? Fred Hutch Cancer Center is about finding cures, preventing disease, and really, it's a very distinct mission that is focused on healing. And so when you think about the Black community and healing, I want to invite you to first share your story around healing. As I understand it, you come from a particular kind of legacy of healing. And then how do you think about that beyond your own personal journey to the entire Black community, the global Black community?
Well, Paul, thank you for that great opening question. I guess I'll first just begin by saying that, as you said, I do come from a family of healers. I'm not too sure how far back it goes, but my mother's a nurse. And of course, she's taught me most of what I understand about what it means to be a healer. My grandmother's a healer in her own right. And so is my aunt. She's actually a practicing traditional healer. And so healing for me is sort of in my blood. And what comes with that is understanding the process of healing and what it means to be a healer. And so I guess coming from my own community, people always come to healers when, of course, they have ailments, they have some sort of discomfort, whether they're going through something. And so if we look at what a healer is and what a healer practices in terms of healing, what a healer is someone who offers support, someone who offers aid, and sometimes they apply remedies and some sorts of healing practices that eventually release whatever trauma, tension, or ailment the person is suffering from. And so healing as it exists is then a process of, we can say, a conversation that is to be had. Before you go and see your doctor and he administers any kind of medicines, he has a conversation with you about what your issue is. And so a lot of my own work, I've come to realize, is conversational. It comes from observing what ailment I might recognize in the Black community, what kind of disorder and discomfort might be coming about to our people. And I start initiating certain conversations by asking questions. The same way a doctor would ask, does your back hurt when you sit? Do you have trouble standing up in the morning? Stuff like that. And so I really try to look at what our concerns are as a community holistically, and I try to then give a response with whatever material I have at my disposal. So I think we do this and we look at healing, it really is, it takes two to tango. And so healing can't happen without, I guess, the support system. And so whoever does need healing needs a proactive and accommodating support system that can respond, can be observant, and then can alleviate whatever tensions might be existing that cause this person discomfort. So I guess that's what my work does as well.
I think so. I very much think so. And I think about my own personal experience looking at some of the art pieces that were a part of your application. I think about how my own mind and body responded, right, to that art. And I think it's it's really quite a powerful responsibility to be an artist. How do you think about your particular role as an artist? I mean, you've talked with me about kind of its healing power, but could you share more about your responsibility as a Black artist?
Well, I guess it begins with recognizing my own ability, being aware of where I am in the world and my own position. So those two things, those two factors have to come into play. Being aware of what I can do, and then also seeing where I am. So those require observation. And as you've said, it is a responsibility. I view it as such, and not only as a pastime, a hobby, something that brings people joy, or I'm not too sure what people imagine a creative or an artist to be, but what I really do see it as is a duty where you become a flag bearer for, I guess, your times. And so understanding what my responsibility is, it is to be vigilant and make a response. Understanding my ability that I have a voice, which comes in an artistic form. And so using that to, I guess, tell the right story in order to make the right response is what my responsibility is. And understanding that makes creating responses a little bit easier because you have a focus. You understand that you're not creating art in order to become aesthetic. or to fill hallways or to form part of exhibitions. You're creating responses that discuss important topics that describe and represent communities and people and situations and experiences. Um, so I guess in the same way that a lawyer's job is to make sure that contracts are succinct and that people are represented when they need to be represented and that the law is abided by, I see my own work in the same way, where I have the responsibility to support my community and to almost be the flag bearer for my community when it comes to describing us.
Mm, mm. Thanks for that. When we talked during your interview, you had some very powerful things to say about Blackness, Black identity, in a world where Blackness can be thought of as surviving crises, right? The crises of racism, white supremacy, the crises of colonization, and when we think about the Black American experience, the transatlantic slave trade, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What we're doing with this program, I think, has a particular resonance for all the communities we will be engaging. But I want to ask you about its resonance, the program's call to you, and why it resonated with you, and what you envision, having not yet created the art, but starting the conversation, what you envision this conversation will do.
That's a brilliant question. It's
Sorry for the length of
it. Sorry, I started daydreaming as soon as you posed the question, because I think it's one of those extremely relevant questions, because you're asking me, I guess, why Fred Hutch should exist in a sense, and why I recognize its existence. Because I'm all the way in South Africa and you're all the way in Seattle, and I've responded to your open call to provide artwork that responds to communities who need healing and representation. Why such a thing would even have to happen would obviously be because, as you've described, we as Africans, as Black people, exist in a survival sense, in a sense of, I guess, I would say anxiety. And so we're not a comfortable people. I've in my few years seen comfort and recognized it in society. But when I look at my own community and where I live, there are a lot of discomforts and people are not yet settled. And so why the Fred Hutchinson Institution would put out such an open call, having looked obviously at your website, I found that you are addressing issues of disenfranchisement. You're addressing issues of historical imbalances. You're addressing issues of historical trauma. And so these issues have manifested themselves, of course, in the loss of land, the loss of culture, the loss of people. But more importantly, it's also created this gap where people obviously need support. And so what the Institute offers is disease curing. It offers counseling and it offers research, whose intention is to alleviate a lot of stress and a lot of diseases. And so when I found the open call, I guess my own work responds to healing because I recognize what my community needs. And so looking at what the Institute had put out in their open call and what you focus on, I found that perhaps I was a necessary voice and what I need to say should be heard. And so I applied myself and with the intention, of course, of representing our people. It is a larger mission where what you're trying to do is create a conversation that recognizes us as a people, Black people, and doesn't put us as second-class citizens in the world, which I fear a lot of institutions and systems have. And so when you put out such an open call, being where you are in the world, I feel as though it's a great opportunity for myself as an African to represent the healing I feel we need as Black people, with the full awareness of where you're coming from, putting the open call out. And so I can just clearly say that Black people in America have not been treated as equal citizens. They have not been recognized as human beings. Their voices have been cast out of society. Unless you're, I guess, a celebrity or someone of note, your voice doesn't hold, I guess, presence. And if you imagine that a Black American has more opportunity for their voice to be heard than an African, it would make complete sense that I would apply myself in order to have our voices heard as well, because we see ourselves in you, we see our struggle as the same, and we see ourselves as people of the same place. And so I feel that the struggle that's happening there is the struggle that's happening here, because we need to recognize what Black people are going through and respond to historical injustices that have been committed against our people with these opportunities. And so I feel that's why I applied.
So glad you did. So glad you did. I can't wait. I literally cannot wait to see where this conversation takes us and how you put in visual form the vocal presence of Black community. Thank you so much, Mark.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you so much. I'm quite excited to begin conceptualizing where this journey could go and the kinds of visual conversations we might begin to have. And so thank you again for this opportunity.
Thank you. That's Mark. You have just met our selected artist, and I want to name that we put out this open call to the entire Pacific Northwest region, as well as Uganda and South Africa, as Fred Hutch has presence in those countries as well. And was just so appreciative of the tremendous response that we received from our locale here in the United States, as well as Uganda and South Africa. So Mark describes Black identity. Mark describes Black diaspora without using the specific term and concept and word and experience. But as you can tell, just an incredibly powerful person who will translate Black experience and our hopes and our message in the art that he will produce in the coming weeks. I now want to introduce our two live panelists who are with us this afternoon. John Masembe. John Masembe is the Black African American clinical patient navigator for Fred Hutch, working directly with Black cancer patients by alleviating barriers to treatment. His passion to improve what he refers to as the Black patient experience was directly born out of the challenges, biases, and complexities of the healthcare system he faced as a young Black patient with sickle cell disease. He loves to educate and empower young Black men with the knowledge and tools to stop the spread of prostate cancer to the next generation. John, welcome. And then I am also introducing Randy Ford. Randy Ford is a Seattle-born creative, dancer, choreographer, actor, activist, curator, and educator. She has been featured in CD forums showing out contemporary Black choreographers, Bumbershoot Festival, Danny Terrell's Black Boys, Ben de la Creme's Beware the Terror of Gaylord Manor, and Kitten and Louise Camptacular, and Jingle All the Gay. She created and co-produced her first full-length evening show, Queen Street, at Langston Hughes Performing Arts Institute with CD Forum in September of 2019. She is a member of Seattle's O Collective, a dance organization committed to putting queer people, women, and people of color at the forefront of everything it does. When not creating work, she's part of the Washington Black Trans Task Force working on a housing initiative to provide Black trans women and femmes temporary to semi-permanent housing. Thank you for that work. Her community work also extends to the Seattle-Tacoma Hiki Ballroom scene with the Royal House of Noir as the night and House Auntie Aisha Noir. Randy has been recognized as an artist to watch for City Arts Magazine 2018, Futures List Awards, and her work Queen Street was nominated and a finalist for the prestigious Queer Art Prize for recent work. She is the recipient of the 2020 Zeitgeist Award presented by the Gender Justice League for her work in community. Randy, a pleasure to have you with us this afternoon. John, thanks for making time in your busy schedule. It is good to be with you both. I just want to start by, after, again, saying thank you for being a part of this conversation, this dialogue that we're having, and being a part of creating the space for expanding dialogue, right, and deepening dialogue in our community. As you heard this short interview with Mark, our selected artist, what came up for you? What came up for you in listening to his words? Randy, do you want to lean in first?
Much. I'm super happy to be here. Thank you so much. I realized I did not send you the updated bio, so apologies, but you read it beautifully.
Thank you.
But hi, again, my name is Randy Ford. I use she, her, goddess as pronouns, and I am the major gifts associate for the Lavender Rights Project, who has a program called the Washington Black Trans Task Force. I want to make sure that's succinct and clear. But I was really enjoying myself listening to Mark earlier, and the whole theme around healing, just really was nail on the head as far as Black community needs healing. We need that good healing, that feel good healing, that drastic uncomfortable healing, get the rubbing alcohol down deep in the wound type healing, like stitch it up, patch it up, maybe even burn it. You know what I mean? Like we have to really heal and just thinking, we're in this 30-year pandemic, and so much healing still needs to be done in terms of repair, with this diaspora of a community that we call the Black community. So healing definitely stuck out to me. And I wrote down as well when Mark mentioned that, a lot of people don't care about this work unless you're a celebrity or someone, who's known and of note and of merit. And it's like, like, where's the people in all of this, who are actually living in this day to day, and so yeah, that definitely like stuck with me, and I really enjoyed, yeah, just listening to Mark's background and how they found y'all and how you found them. Like, yeah, just healing for sure, big thing. What about you, John?
Thank you, Randy. Yeah, Don?
Yes, honestly, thank you, Randy. That was very, very thoughtful. I feel like there's also a lot to unpack from that conversation, from that interview. Like it really, for those who don't know, we were part of this interview process, and it was really, really hard to narrow down artists because we had artists from all over the it's from South Africa, Seattle, in Uganda, but what Mark really said, some most of the real highlights from that conversation, especially this interview between him and Paul, is like the issue of healing, right? That is very, very important because we we as individuals, we don't often, especially in the Black community, we need to start. We have a lot to heal because of the trauma that we've experienced over time, right? And not just in the community, but also in the healthcare setting, right? For Mark to view himself as a healer through his art, that kind of, resonated with me. And because to him, that's a duty, using art as a way to bring some kind of like visual aid to the trauma and the pain of the community, right? So with that same concept, I'm like, as healthcare workers at Fred Hutch, right? How can we do our duty as healthcare workers to be part of the healing process, right? To help the community heal. And how can we do that? Is by what I'm saying is like he's using art as a way to bring some kind of visual to the pain and issues that are important to Black folks, right? And not just Black folks, but all marginalized folks as well, because this is going to be just going to continue over time. So I was really touched by his demeanor and his willingness to like, you know what, uh, the history that's here in the United States towards Black folks is also crosses the oceans all the way back to South Africa as well, right? But the fact that he's using his artistic gift to bring attention to be part of the healing process for us here in the United States is actually really, really promising. So I'm like, okay, how can I use my gift as a healthcare worker, my position as a healthcare worker, to help people who come in for help, for treatment, for cancer treatment? How can we make them feel seen? How can we make them feel comfortable to know that, yo, they're represented here too, right? It's not just it's not just a Seattle's predominantly white, but I want to make sure they also feel seen. So I was really excited about his dialogue and how his art is going to. It's really, really, really exciting to see. So I don't know if when we get a chance to look onto his website, but it's really, really promising.
Very much so. Um,
Yes.
I want to lean into, something I heard you, a phrase you just said, and because we're using art as this mediator for bringing concerns, bringing hopes forward, and representing a relationship. And
Hmm.
it's a visual art. I'm kind of latching on to this phrase of being seen. And I'd like to invite both of you to talk about what it means to be seen within, right? Being seen in the Black community
Ooh,
means what?
ooh, that's such a good question. Randy, you want to go first on this one?
You just muted. You just muted the mic.
I can,
It's so good. It's so good. I need to think.
I mute or unmute?
Yeah,
You good. You're
we
good.
hear
We
you.
can hear
We hear
Oh,
you.
okay, sorry. I was like, wait, did I mute or
you.
unmute? I can take a stab at it. So being seen in the Black community, it's there's a lot. It's a lot asking. It's a lot you're asking. I identify as a Black, non-binary, trans feminine person, and a lot of the ways I'm seen inside of the Black community is not an affirming one. And so, what does it mean to be seen when you don't want to be seen? Like there's always somebody watching us. White people are watching us, Black people are watching us. Like it's all there's, especially in Seattle. There's this like a Black, or ooh, like we're trying to find community so bad. You know what I mean? Because we're so spread out. Our historically Black districts are not Black anymore. Our communities are pushed out, living in South King County, Pierce County, in sub-rural areas. Um, so, one, I think, we don't see each other, enough. That's one part of the whole thing of Black people being seen. Two, being seen when you don't want to be seen. I'm a performer and artist, and so a lot of my forward-facing work puts me in a position to where I'm approached a lot, and and people seek certain information about Black community from me, and it's like,
Right.
interesting. I can tell you what I
Right.
need, you know what I mean? But I can't really tell you what everyone, I can tell you what I specifically need or what I need to feel seen. Queer and trans people, we get seen in so many different ways. And you add Blackness, African, whatever, mixed race on top of that. There's so much cognitive dissonance. I love that word because
Mm.
it really does describe just a lot of like that's kind of, just you're in space, but you don't feel like you're in space. And so you have to like compartmentalize a lot of your experiences. Be like, wait, what was that? Was that what that was? I'm not sure. And so a lot of us, when we see each other too, like we don't trust each other because
Mm.
we don't, we just have not been seen fully. We have not been affirmed in our stories. We haven't been told, like, oh, you're right. I'm sorry. It's always met with the, oh, that wasn't it. Are you sure it wasn't this?
Mm.
So when you talk about seeing the community, like, do people really see us? Do they only see us as performers and artists? Do they see us as your everyday people? Do they see us as your doctors, your lawyers, your students, your children, your mothers, your fathers, your family? Do they see us as, vulnerable? Do they see us as fragile? Even though we like to talk about being strong and resilient, but like I feel like we are one of the most fragile communities because we don't
Yeah.
know enough about each other. And so
Right.
to be seen in the Black community is going to come a long way because there are things that we don't see right now that make up Black community that we don't think are Black or diaspora or family or community. And we kind of latch on to what feels familiar, and some of those tropes are dangerous, and we need to be better at naming that as Black community, calling each other
Right.
in. So yeah, being it's and if you can please tackle on John because there's so much
Yeah, it's
time.
okay. I'm processing it as you speak, right? Because it's to be seen, as a black person here in especially I'm just gonna focus on the area that we're in Seattle right now.
Right.
There's a lot. What it would mean be really, really important is to try and be cautious about being comfortable into by stepping into other in areas that are not comfortable, right?
Mm,
Because I feel like that's the only way where we can learn to sympathize with each other and respect each other's differences, right? And what this art piece is doing, what this project is doing, this community public art dialogue, I think what it's going to do is to me, is going to represent a couple of things. One, culture, right? And then two, the history of, Black culture, right? And then also the things that are important to us, our cultures, our strengths, but also the vulnerability of, Black folks, right? Me, I come from a Ugandan family, right? But I was raised in Seattle, so I'm a product to both African and African American, you know? And either way, I still try to find things that are important to me to still feel seen. So when I walk into a healthcare institute where I work as a provider, I still have to come in and still be my authentic self without having to worry about, oh, how I'm going to be perceived, or having to kind of, make sure like of my culture and how I communicate with you and the things that are important to me also. If the patient that I'm going to be taking care of feels like I could connect with them on a cultural level, and I believe that will be the best way for that person to kind of lower down the anxiety and will more have more of a conversation that is create an environment that is more welcoming. And majority of that's going to start with their art, right? Um, so I really, really hope that to me to be seen as a black folk in Seattle is coming in with my vulnerability, with my trauma, with my with my personality, right? With my strengths, and skill sets, and using those skill sets to be able to improve and help others who rather feel unseen, to let them know, like, hey, we are here. We're here with you. And we're going to walk this journey together. And we can have a conversation about things that matter to you, right? And also giving, equal opportunity, and finding comfort in small communities within Seattle as well, especially here, because there's not a lot of us. So it's important to create some kind of dialogue that will help us reconnect and be much more of a stronger pack. So I think that's kind of where I would see it. Um, I don't know if that's kind of answers your question, Paul, but those are the emotions that were triggered in me, and it's so hard to kind of break it all down. But I think those are some of the issues that I'm like, you know what, coming in my authentic self, it means I'm strong, I'm cultural, I'm still vulnerable, but I'm coming into this space where I'm bringing so many other aspects of myself to make sure that other Black folks as well feel seen. And even if you're not Black either, it doesn't mean you cannot understand who I am. Just see me for who I am.
Because it's such a human and humane
All
uh,
right.
sort of foundational. I don't want to use
All
basic, but
right.
foundational
Right.
expectation, right? I
Mm-hmm.
think we could say in asking um, any underrepresented community, any marginalized community, if we hear the request to be seen, we hear a request to just be really human.
Question.
It's such a, why is this an aspiration for human beings to just be human?
Mm-hmm.
Is fascinating to think about. I think both of you offered so much in your responses that speak
Mm.
to how we can do some healing within the healthcare system, within cancer care,
Right.
within community at large. I want to
Mm.
ask specifically about your thoughts, just to bring those, to amplify those intersections that you named, Randy. Fannie Lou Hamer said, nobody's free until everybody's free. How can this project reinforce this message and also empower and support freedom, right? Even the freedom to be healthy.
Ooh, well, it's a really great, yeah, that quote is amazing. It's definitely something that I love to remember, that, it ain't over till it's over. Like we can't have we can't talk about freedom if there's still a community that is being, you know, subjugated to harm and violence. We're not free if we have, 51 reported Black trans women, trans people murdered in 2021 and thinking, oh, we're out of the pandemic in 2022. Like, that's not what it is. It's all about, what that quote tells me, that it's all about focusing on the most marginalized, the most intersectional, figuring out who needs the most resources. And once you find out who needs those resources, i.e., Black trans women and femmes, Indigenous folks, disabled folks, everyone else's liberation, everyone will see their liberation off that trickle effect. If you get it right for Black trans women, disabled folks, Indigenous people, you will get it right for everyone else, because through these lenses of intersectionality, coined by Kimberly Crenshaw as well too, but just really honing in, why, if we can understand, that the Jewish community, their plight in life, if we can understand, a little bit about women's rights, and a touch, because femininity is vast, and masculinity is vast. If we can really tackle, like, if we can understand, why certain communities, need humanity, why can't we figure it out for Black people? Like, it's really interesting to me. Like, we always see the humanity needed for animals. We see the humanity needed for other communities that have gone through genocide and murder and rape, but we can't see it for Black community. For some reason, it's just not matching up. There's something we're doing, to like pause this. And so until you hear us and see us and believe us and really like listen to understand without listening to respond and justify why, it's going to keep going to this cyclical effect. We're going to keep being separated. They're going to keep trying to attack our youth. They're going to keep trying to attack our families. They're going to keep, like, it's just, yeah. And if people really understand too, that like, if they can do this to Black community, what makes you think you're exempt? Like, what makes you think that you're not next? And so it's really like the minute we come together, as Black community, as a diaspora community, as a whole community, including our allies, you know what I mean? Like, we're not going to get it right, and so I think that's what that quote gives to me, for sure.
Wow. That was deep.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was real deep. Yeah, you grew up in church?
I'm not a church girl by no means, but I grew inside. I feel it.
Try to
Yeah,
follow
no,
that. Try
that's
to
true.
follow that.
Yeah. I think this also just something just kind of hit me and kind of brought me back to what Mark said. And that approach, I feel like the way to do that is to approach it on as it's a duty to watch out for the marginalized communities, right? Like, it's our duty as a people, whatever field you're in, whether you're a healthcare worker, whether you are uh, um, a therapist, whether you're a pastor or you're a carpenter, right? It's your duty to be in responsibility to care for those who are in need,
Wow.
right? And here at Fred Hutch, we're lucky to be in a position where we can deliver, quality care to folks, right? We create access to care, right? So if we have a lot of amazing providers, but also we want to make sure that we take that as a responsibility to care for the need within their own, to make sure that they are seen, especially the Black folks. And how we're going to do that? Through empathy, right? Understanding, each other, listening. There's one thing to listen, but you not understand. But even if you don't understand me in that moment, just give me your ear so I can see it, right? So I could try to sympathize where you're coming from. Um, and people come in with different imbalances as well, but approaching it as a responsibility to make sure, as I look at it as a responsibility for me to care for the sick, And it's also my responsibility to watch out for those who are marginalized, even if I'm not in a position of power to change certain things. But in that very moment, I know whoever I'm interacting with, I'm making a difference in their lives, right? So and I think that's what Mark is doing too, using his art as a responsibility to bring, visibility to the issues that are affecting the Black community. So there's a lot more to come, and I think this is a really, really, really exciting project, honestly.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It
Absolutely.
is. It is. And it's a process that we're in. One of the things um, that I feel really strongly about what we're doing here with the art and the dialogue and taking time to do this, right? So,
Mhm,
just so folks know, Mark is going to watch this recording. Mark is going to join a later conversation that's live with members of the community. We're hoping to share this recording out, right, as we kind of build and reposition ourselves as an institution with the community we are in. And since Randy, you are not a member of the Hutch community, the Fred Hutch community, really want your insight about this opportunity we have for reframing, restating, relaunching,
Yeah.
reintroducing ourselves
Yeah.
to Black community.
Mm.
What
Mm.
what do we need to? What do you want to make sure um, is a part of this reintroduction?
I love this and thank you. Thank you. And I feel part of the Fred Hutch community as well. But I appreciate you, fam. We cousins. Um but definitely like in the reframing, especially you know, with an establishment such as Fred Hutch, I feel like if there is an emphasis on just centering the stories and experiences and medical histories,
Mhm.
of Black trans community, sex workers, youth, elders, like really collecting, like just, it's gonna be hard. People are gonna be like, "Why are you contacting me?" You know what I mean? Like, what do you want? It's
mhm,
gonna feel like exploitation. But I think
mhm,
what Black trans community, I feel like a lot of Black community needs to really think about how in which they can support the Black trans and non-binary and gender
mhm.
community, like for real. And if
Yeah.
there is just more institutions, more, communities, Black communities, diaspora communities that really center and value like queer and trans life and the inclusion of queer and trans life in medical practices and medical research, it's the best start. Are your forms, that you're having people fill out, are they gender inclusive? Are they, do they have options for people who like don't want to put their employment because they may not have it or their means of employment is considered illegal? Like what other ways can y'all work with this community who's like surviving day by day and yeah, utilizing sometimes illegal practices to like survive and get through? You know, um, how do you talk to someone who might use substances to cope, and all of that, and it might be causing their illness that's, that you're trying to maybe get them to acknowledge. And so how do you really level with all of those nuances, and still, honor, your practices as medical professionals and medical providers and medical, healers, that healing, again, that healing is really key. And like, how do you, yeah, just yeah, I feel like just if you start with your forms, if you start with just asking your staff, asking yourselves, like, do we actually include, like, welcomingly, like forward facingly Black trans community with this art project? Is Mark going to be engaging with a lot of Black trans queer people, in the region or out of the region? Seattle's a very specific place and it's not like a lot of other places. So we can't always think that,
Mhm,
what Seattle needs is what everyone needs. So really coming also with
mhm.
that mindset as well too, because our needs are very different here. Our weather
Yeah.
is. So yeah, that's kind of like a little bit of what I think. Thank you for asking that question as well too. It's so rare, to get asked that. So I just realized that, like, oh my God, someone's at.
Hmm.
I don't know. Something about it just hit different. So yeah, I think starting there. I hope that answered your question also.
Absolutely. Absolutely, it does.
I try not to curse.
Without so
We
much
had
pride.
a brief conversation before we got on this call. Randy asked me about, I like to cuss. So is it going to be okay? And I thought, well, no, if the Hutch is ready for that, let's figure out as we go. But even that, right, is an important part of this conversation. Like, what language do we get to use that gets heard, right? And
Right.
that gets heard in a way that meets our intention and our need. Can
Come
we
on.
Right.
respond? Can we respond to folks who do not use the language
Come
that
on.
we think
Uh,
is supposed to be used, right?
uh,
Like, all of that is
uh,
a part of what we really deeply need to dialogue about, because that's a part of seeing you. That's
yeah.
a part of seeing me. That's a part of us
Yeah.
seeing each other, right? And
Right. Right.
it's so important. So we're in our final 2 minutes, and then I have to wrap up. But just so folks
Okay.
know, the idea
Yeah.
is for Mark to engage with the community. He will create his art that is a reflection of us, and um, our art piece will be revealed um, uh, close to Juneteenth. So we have Juneteenth as a holiday for the Hutch, and so it will be the day after we take that holiday. And so, thinking about that process, and I'm going to ask you, both of you, to respond very quickly. Thinking about that process, how we are engaging community over time, how we are trying to start a dialogue, how we are
Mhm.
trying to step into a process of healing, to to um, uh, to be in right relationship with community. Um, Maybe, given our time, I'll just ask both of you to offer, when you think of your hope for this, maybe
Mm.
three adjectives, and then we will wrap.
Mm.
You first, John.
Yeah. I don't know if they're adjectives, but I'm just gonna say the three words that come
Mhm.
to mind, right? Um, of course, one of the first thing is visibility.
Mm.
Um, and then also, important, like create an environment of like open dialogue, right? To step into other people's shoes by allowing them to express themselves. And
Mhm.
then the very last thing I would say is to create a level of solidarity, right, among us within the Black community, but then also outside of the Black community as well. So I hope, yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's my only feedback.
Thank you, John.
Yeah.
Randy, we're at 12:59.
Yes, and you inspired my three words, John. So thank you. That's why I had you
Okay.
go first. So
No problem.
learn, keep learning.
Right.
Learn. Create more spaces, create spaces that don't exist, create spaces
Mm.
that you want to see, be the change you want to see, and explode. Spread it
Mm.
all over wherever it needs to go.
I
I
like that.
love that. I
I
love that.
like
It's
that.
a powerful way to end, because we're not going to contain, we're going to explode. I love it. Thank you. Thank you
Yes.
so much, Randy. Thank you, panelists. Thank you to everyone in attendance. We are truly, truly excited for the ongoing conversations and dialogue we will have with community, and for taking this program really a lot further. We've left a lot of room for where we as a community, Fred Hutch and the greater community can go together. We can do this. Thank you all so much. Have a great rest of the day. Take care. Our next community dialogue will be on May 3rd from noon to 1.